Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. So glad you guys could join us once again. For those tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X, we're glad to have all of you with us. We're bringing our family over on Instagram as well, so you can be part of our chat. And last but certainly not least, going to bring our friends over on Amazon so I can introduce you guys to today's guest. I think you guys are going to really enjoy this. It's a great read for the summer, but I think it's great for all members of the family too. It really does show that sometimes you can't judge a book by its cover, but also how we can be able to work together. And we're now live on Amazon Live with Cyrus Webb Presents. If you guys are new to us on the Amazon platform, going to type you guys a welcome message there. Make sure you guys do hit that follow button either here in this corner or down below. You also will see the newest book by our guest, author Miriam Gershow. She's joining us to talk about her writing journey, but also her newest book called Closer, a perfect title, I should say, for this book as well. We're going to talk to Miriam not only about the cast of characters she delivers in this book, but what it's been like for her to do what she loves as a storyteller and see readers relate to it. Miriam, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Look, the pleasure's definitely all mine. Congratulations on the new book, Closer. Again, as I mentioned, you and I were just talking briefly before we went live, and I was saying to you, and I was saying to our audience, it almost feels like a TV series because we get to spend time with these different characters, getting to see who they are beneath the layers. Is that one of the things that you're hearing from people who've read the book?
I mean, I love hearing that it reads like a TV series. May the TV gods hear that as well,
Right.
and be inspired. It was definitely my intent to capture the voices of multiple characters. I'd always wanted to write a story from multiple points of view, that mostly because I want to write what I like to read, and I really have enjoyed books with multiple points of view. And whenever I went into books thinking, oh, this is going to be my multiple point of view story, it never really worked. But this one, when I was sitting down to write the earliest drafts of it, just the three central voices, Woody, the guidance counselor, Lark, the student, and Stephanie, the parent of another student, all centered around this high school, those voices came to me really early. And I wasn't even sure where the plot of the book was going, but the voices of the characters captured me. So yeah, it was one of the goals of this book was to just be really true to those central characters, and then other side characters that kept appearing, whether they had their own point of view or not. Like the cast of characters kept growing and growing and growing.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that is what makes this book so fun and relatable as for me as a reader, Miriam, is because, a lot of times, and I'm sure you would agree that sometimes whether you're watching a TV series or a movie, the main characters may not be ones that really connect with you. But those secondary characters, like, oh yeah, I see myself in them. I see myself in their personality or the way they're being perceived. And I felt like that with Closer. Another thing I would say, though, that I was kind of surprised at, and I was just saying to you, I think this is my first time reading a book of yours, is how much Oregon kind of plays a character role in this, too. The scenery, I see that in the book as well. Was that something that just kind of evolved because of your love of the state, or was that also intentional?
No, that definitely evolved.
Okay.
I tend to come up with place last. Like all my first drafts are sort of taking place in a nowhereville, like it could be anywhere. And my first book, I grew up in suburban Detroit, and my first book, The Local News, ended up being set in an imaginary town in suburban Detroit. And this one, about a draft and a half in, I was really struggling with where is this? Like, where is this happening? But it's a story of many things. But one thing is this incident between this black kid and these white kids in a school library, where the black student is like one of very few students, and in this predominantly white town. And it occurred to me, like, where is this? Well, this is Oregon. This is the dynamic in Oregon. And I've lived here for over 30 years now, but I'm always ambivalent about writing a real place. So I once again made up Horace, Oregon, a college town in Oregon, not dissimilar from Eugene, where I live.
Yeah. And I love that. And you mentioned that component. And I think too, for myself, I went into it knowing to expect that aspect of the story, that there would be something that had to do with this, with these individuals and race being a part of it. What I was not expecting is the other layers that you present, and that is about perception. And I think for some, dealing with as the book goes on, dealing with issues of anger and your emotions. How that,
Mhm.
that's something that's kind of universal. Talk to us about that, Miriam, for you, because was it that scene in particular with the students that was the spark for the book, or what is it that actually sparked Closer for you?
I several things sparked it. I've long been obsessed with high school because I think it's such a rife setting for characters.
Yeah.
Teenagers don't know how to control their emotions. Teenagers don't know how to hide their needs. So they're really rich characters.
Hmm.
And my first book was narrated from the point of view of a 15-year-old. But
Hmm.
this, I knew there were two sparks. One, I knew something was going to happen, and both the students were going to be involved, but that the guidance counselor as well.
Yeah.
And then this incident in the library, which, oh, after the prologue opens the book, that
Hmm.
took place. I wrote like 40 pages in the first draft before that
Hmm.
scene. So this interaction between these two sort of dumb white boys and this black student, Boz, it wasn't the spark for the whole book, but it is sort of what started the balls rolling down the hill. That, like, to me, that incident is what got things started, but then this story expands and expands and expands to so much more. So
Yeah.
it's almost like that first incident is the match that lit something, but the incident itself is meaningful, but doesn't carry that much weight
Yeah. Yeah.
throughout the
I,
rest of the book.
I totally can agree with that. As you were talking, I was thinking about, again, there's so many scenes. You mentioned, of course, kids doing dumb things. We have to, when we talk about dumb things, we have to talk about Woody for a second, though, because Woody Woody shows that we adults also do some dumb things. And Woody's an interesting character because at first I'm thinking Woody's one of, he's a good guy, right? He's a good guy, but he's made some questionable choices. What was that? How much fun was that to create someone who, on the outside, seemed to be what you would want, but knowing he was dealing with his own stuff.
Yeah, I loved writing. I mean, I love all my characters, and it's really
Hmm.
interesting hearing reader reaction. I love with a cast of characters this big who readers respond to and don't. And
Yeah.
I will say that Woody gets the strongest reaction from people. So Woody's the guidance counselor. He's used to being on the periphery of the school, but because of a basically circumstance, he's at the center of this library incident, and that kind of puffs him up. And then he makes questionable choices in his
Yeah.
personal life. But
Hmm.
what I love about Woody is his sense of being a good guy. Like, throughout his questionable choices, he's always the hero of his own story. Like,
Yeah.
he doesn't see himself as the bad guy, which I think is
Right.
true of all of us. And
Right.
I think he epitomizes for me the teenager that lives in all of us. Like,
Hmm.
he is an adult who is sort of fueling himself on hormones and want, but can make up all sorts of stories about what he's doing isn't so bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
Another
loved writing that.
Yeah. Another thing that comes up in the book, Miriam, and I think where our audience will definitely see a lot of themselves, is the role social media plays in the world that we live in
Mhm.
today, namely Facebook, which I live a great deal of my my time on because of work, but also, well, mainly because of work. Um, was that something you just knew because you were dealing with these kids, these young people, that social media would play a role in that and the way it was used for good and bad?
I'm not sure how conscious it was, but I knew I needed to keep upping the stakes. Like
Okay.
this, so like lighting the match, this first incident, I knew that it sort of needed to be a ball rolling down a hill, gathering steam. And
Mm,
I think at some point I thought, what would come next? Oh,
gotcha.
what would come next is this whole online world. When I was back in high school many years ago, there was no online world. So that's not intuitive to me. But when I sat and thought, how would this, months and months later, when the incident's over and done and resolved, I thought, how do I continue to exert pressure on these characters? And then I was like, oh, right, this would have a life of its own online as well.
Yeah, such a great point, and very timely, I think, for all of us. I want to say, for those who are just tuning in, welcome. You all are watching Cyrus Webb Presents here on Amazon Live, but we are simulcasting on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X. And as well as we have an Instagram as well. Miriam Gershow is joining us today. She's the author of the new book, had a chance to read, called Closer. You all can get it here on Amazon. I'm going to highlight it for you guys over there. You can get it in print, or you can be able to get the Kindle edition as well. We're going to also let you guys know how to stay connected with Miriam too. Miriam, I want to talk about some of the other characters and the elements that I think play well into this story. And for me, as the reader, about the title, then you can kind of talk to us about for yourself what the title was. I love the fact that you have these individuals that at first glance, they seem to butt heads in different ways. You and I were talking about whether it was someone making a judgment about someone because of their size or because of their color, and and yet how these people are able to come together. What in my mind I kept thinking that we are all a lot more alike or closer than we sometimes think, and sometimes events in life can show that, right? That people, you take away the obvious separations, right? And that people are able to come together. For yourself, did the title come initially, or was it something that kind of came with the story?
The title came the very last thing. Like, as soon as I finished the first draft, I thought, okay, the title is Closer. And I think I love hearing your thoughts on it, because I think, oh yeah, right, that's great. To me, it is like a story of this community, and Closer is aspirational. Like, these are people who want to be close, if not to each other, then to their own loved ones. They're separate from each other. There's conflicts between the various characters. And I think what they're all striving for and what they all want is to be closer. Yeah. And I think some of them are better at that than others by the end of the book.
Yeah. And I think too, just as a side note for myself, Miriam, what I thought about too was, a lot of these characters became closer to themselves too, right? I mean, they got to know themselves better, and to kind of take off the chip of thinking someone's automatically out to get them or out to judge them, and better understand who they are and their place in the world, right?
Absolutely. I love hearing that. I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah. And I think that again is what makes this book so cool and so relatable in the way that it is. So for yourself, you mentioned your first book, and again, I haven't read it yet, so now you're going to make me have to go back to read it.
Fantastic.
Do you find that you try to challenge yourself from book to book, or do you kind of let each book kind of stand on its own?
I think both.
Okay.
I think I think I am in a lot of ways writing the same story over and over and over again. So it went novel, the local news, short story collection, survival tips from last year, and then Closer, another novel this year. Mm-hmm. I am always kind of structurally thinking, what's the next interesting thing that I can do? The work in progress that I'm working on right now is told in oral history form, which I'm having so much fun with. So it's this like huge cast of almost 40 characters that I have to keep on a cheat sheet, and they each, they each speak in oral history form. The book is formatted with their name, their age, where they live, and then what they had to say. So formally, I like to set up new challenges for myself just to keep it interesting for me doing this every day. But then story-wise, I sort of feel like I am always telling the story of people who want to be close to other people, but may or may not have figured out how to do that.
Yeah. There was a scene I just thought about, and I want to make sure I get the character's name right. For some reason, I want to say Nancy, and that may not be right. But what I was thinking about was actually about scenery, because it seems like you're so good at detail, whether you're describing a place or even the characters. How much fun is that for you to kind of envision for yourself, not only what the characters are like, but the world that they're living in?
Thank you. And I think that the only way I know how to write, or to write up, the difference between a successful story for me and one that ends up in the recycle bin is one that I can immerse myself in the world and then write from there. So I feel like I'm in the world looking out. So those details feel like I'm immersed in them, and I'm just kind of saying what I see and hear and feel. It's a great deal of fun. I feel very, very lucky that this is what I get to spend my time doing.
Yeah. And I think too, for myself, and thinking the reason why that question came to me is because I feel like what I mentioned earlier about, the place being a character. I think too, it's like even when you're describing the characters themselves, we're able to really feel like we know them. We know their emotions and know, the details that the other characters are picking up on them. And I think that's one of the gifts. Do you find at this point in your career, Miriam, that you are being asked more from aspiring writers? As well as even for those who may have been writing, for some time, about tips on bringing characters to life. Is that something that's been happening to you?
My day job is teaching writing, so I spend a lot of time talking to students about developing characters. And like tomorrow, I'm going to teach at the Willamette Writers Conference in Portland. So a lot of my life is spent teaching, and I do think that I tell aspiring and starting writers that our first draft, we lead with our skills, and then revision, where the real work comes, is all compensatory. You do what you're less adept at in revision, and I always start with character. So in some ways, because it's so intuitive to me, it's harder for me to teach than like setting, which I have to really think about. Yeah. Or even plot structure, I have to really think about. But I have thought of all sorts of ways. Like I've had to reverse engineer, how do I intuitively come up with character in order to teach it?
Right. And I think too, the reason why I was curious about that is because, especially with these characters, I'm going to ask you another question that you may not want to answer, but I'm just going to ask anyway. I was thinking that, these characters you've made them so unique within themselves that we as the reader don't get them confused. Like, okay, wait a minute, was that we feel like we've gotten to know them as the story progresses, and I think that goes into the skill of you being able to let us know who they are, their personalities, and also what they're dealing with. The question I wanted to ask you, Miriam, was not to say that you will, but if you were to revisit these characters, is there one in particular that stood out to you that you would like to continue their story?
That's such a good question, because in this oral history that I'm writing, it takes place in an assisted living facility. And I was like 2/3 of the way through, and I thought, oh, so Lark is one of the points of view in this book. And her mother is in this book with her own sort of set of struggles. And I put Lark, the book takes place 10 years after Closer, but I put Lark's mom in this assisted living facility as one of the residents, largely because I want to see Lark 10 years later. She hasn't appeared yet, but I'd like her to pop in for a scene or two to see how she's doing.
Interesting. And see, I didn't even know that. That is awesome. IG Live with Angela. Hello to you over there on IG. Glad you could be able to join us. I see you guys over there on YouTube as well. I appreciate the hearts. If you guys have any closing thoughts for Miriam as we're wrapping up here, please put those in the chat as well. Miriam, I really appreciate this time. I do want to ask, since I asked that question earlier about hearing from writers and knowing that you teach them, any advice you have for our audience out there that may have been thinking about a story that's been percolating in their mind, or even one they started? Any advice you'd like to offer them?
I mean, my advice is always the same. Read as much as you can. And then write as much as you can. The only way through the writing is through the writing. Like, you just have to just do it, as Nike says.
That's right.
Get started. There's so many classes and resources and community organizations to work on refining it, but the first thing to do is just build a habit of reading and writing.
Love it. Again, everyone, Miriam Gershow has been our guest today. Her new book is called Closer. You can get it here through our friends at Amazon, either in print or the Kindle edition. We're going to highlight the Kindle edition for you guys there. Miriam, great conversation with you. Thank you so much for stopping by. How can our audience stay connected with you?
My website is miriamgershow.com. I'm Miriam Gershow on Instagram and Blue Sky, and M Gershow on Facebook.
Love it. Miriam, looking forward to our next chat together.
Thank you so much, Cyrus. What a pleasure.
Thank you. And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.